Today we're going to take a worn out cliche about entrepreneurship and how to become more successful, and we're going to turn it into something that's actually practical. But to do that, I'm going to ask you to do something that's kind of strange and counterintuitive, but it works. I've proven it and tested it on my marketing guinea pigs, on my marketing apprentices. So stay tuned to find out what that is. Hello, I'm Shane Malach from activegrowth.com, and the cliche that we're taking on today is that you need resilience to be successful as an entrepreneur, right? You have to have the ability to take some knocks, to fail and get yourself back up again and keep going. And this is true. Like many cliches, there's more than a grain of truth in this. And in fact, the best word for this quality, I think, is grit. And Angela Duckworth, I'll link to a TED talk by her below about this, and she also wrote a book about this, that shows, she's done research on this, and it actually shows that people who have this quality of grit are far more likely to succeed in whatever they undertake. So it is a really important quality for success and for entrepreneurship. But the problem is, it's not very useful, right? The kind of thing, oh, it's not how often you fail, it's how often you get back up again. It's something you can see on a motivational poster, but like what do you do with it? How do you actually put that into action and into practice? I think that most people who share these kinds of motivational quotes and who talk about this probably don't actually have experience in doing this themselves in practice. And I believe that because there is one really important aspect to this that I basically never see anyone talk about, and it comes from the practical experience of this. So in my own entrepreneurial story, yes, I have failed a lot, and I do still fail a lot. In fact, this is one of the things that I think is often misinterpreted, right? When people meet me now and they basically meet successful entrepreneur Shane, I think they often think, oh, this guy is constantly succeeding. This guy is, everything he touches turns to gold, something like that, right? This kind of impression you get. And this is actually not true at all. In fact, I think it's quite likely that I have failed at more things than most people ever even attempt. So yes, failure is very much part of the process. But here's the thing, I don't experience failure. Now that might sound like a contradiction, right? I fail a lot, but I don't experience failure. Let me explain. In my experience with starting and running businesses, there are many kinds of failure on many different levels and at many different scales. And if I look at, every product I've ever launched, every offer I've ever made, every marketing campaign I've ever started, every piece of content I've ever put out, then there's kind of failure and success on very different scales. Sometimes you launch a product, it goes extremely well. Sometimes you launch a product and it's kind of lukewarm. Sometimes you launch a product and basically no one cares. And I've definitely there's a kind of a graveyard of things in my past, right? Websites I started that maybe just never went anywhere and I shut them down again. Or products I launched that sold a little bit but not a lot, and then I gave up on them and things like that. And every once in a while, things also go really well. And in fact, on a smaller scale, every time I put out a piece of content like this video, or any blog post or anything like that, there's always this kind of randomness that I find, even after many years, unpredictable. Even with this video right now, are people going to like this or not? I don't know. I can't predict it. And I've gotten used to just putting stuff out anyway, because every once in a while, there's something where I think, I somehow missed the mark. I don't think this is a good piece of content. And then people love it. And they tell me in comments, this really helped me. This really resonated with me. I'm taking action on this. And clearly, it's good that I put it out anyway, right? Even though it felt like this might be a failure, it ended up being a success. So right away, there are two takeaways here, that success and failure can happen on many different levels, like anything from a big launch that is either super successful or a dud, to much more granular, like putting out a blog post or a video and it either does well or it doesn't do so well. And secondly, it's unpredictable. It's really hard to predict. I have examples on both sides. I have examples of things that I've put out that surprised me, that people responded so well. But I have at least one product launch in my past where I was sure that we'd done the market research right. I was sure that we had a winner on our hands, and it just didn't go well at all. So this has happened a lot in my past, and it continues happening, and I expect it to continue happening because of that randomness factor. But here's the thing, like I said, I don't experience failure. And let me give you an analogy for this to explain what I mean. Imagine that you're a boxer, and imagine that you're a really good boxer, you're a world champion boxer. Well, guess what? You're still gonna get hit in the face, right? You're gonna get hit in the face in your fights, even if you win the fight, and you're going to get hit in the face in training. And it's simply part of the game, right? No matter how good of a boxer you are, you're going to get hit. And if you're a world champion boxer, an individual hit to your face no longer feels like failure. I actually have this as a personal experience. I used to practice martial arts years and years ago. And I actually remember this happening. You know, the very first time, for most people, if you do sparring, the very first time you get hit, it's kind of a shock to the system. There's all kinds of stuff going on, you know, beyond just like pain in your face. Like your ego flares up, right? And you have like this, a typical newbie thing is like they immediately want to get revenge and rush in as soon as they've been hit. But also it's like this, it just feels like there's this emotional response, right? And there might be, you feel like, oh my God, I'm screwing up, right? I'm screwing up, I got hit, this is bad. And you feel stressed about it or you overthink it and so on. So initially, when you get hit in sparring, there's all this stuff going on. And most of it is like internal and emotional. It's not the actual physical impact of getting hit. That's the problem. But as you train, that reaction becomes weaker and weaker and more silent. And I actually remember this in my own training. I remember the sparring session where I just stopped caring. And I even stopped and told my sparring partner, hey, I just noticed I don't care anymore. Like when you hit me, there's just zero response, right? My ego doesn't flare up at all. I have there's like no overanalyzing it, just nothing. I just keep going. It was really interesting to get to that point. And of course, when you get to that point, it makes you a better fighter because you're not reactive anymore. And you know, you can basically make the right decision in the moment without being too shocked, without being distracted, without getting emotional, and so on. And the exact same thing happens with failure in the context of running a business. You know, in the beginning, and I see so many people who worry so much about, you know, writing one blog post or creating one video, is so worried about, are people going to like it? What if I look stupid in this video? What if people comment on, I don't know, my hair or my lack of hair or whatever it is, right? Like so much emotion tied into, oh my God, what if people don't like this? Whereas if you do it long enough, you just stop caring. At some point, you just stop caring. And you can be, it doesn't mean that you become blind to whether something is successful or not, but you get into a position where you can simply objectively learn from the mistake or objectively learn from the success and move on. So you can make use of the information that comes with failure or success, but without all the emotional baggage. So this is what happens when you actually develop this quality of grit. Your failures, the things that don't go so well, don't feel like failures. You don't have the emotional response of failure anymore. And so if you look at what I'm doing, I'm putting out a lot of stuff, but whenever something goes well, I'm fairly happy about that. That's great, but I move on. And whenever something doesn't go well, again, I'm not sad about it. I don't feel like, oh my God, I failed. What does this mean about me? What does this mean about my future? I just move on. I'm busy doing the next thing. So here are 3 points for you for how to turn this cliche into something practical. The first one is what we just talked about, the stoicism of the boxer. Be aware that this is where you want to get. And it's okay in the beginning to be more emotionally tied up, but realize that this is basically a sign of being a beginner and aim to get past that. Aim not to satisfy that desire to, oh my God, I only want to produce perfect things that everybody's going to like and everybody's going to approve of and everybody's going to validate me for. Instead, just notice that, okay, right now I care way too much and I have to get through that. I have to get to the point where I'm like that stoic boxer who doesn't have an emotional response whether he gets hit or not. Point number 2 is to make sure that you don't orient your actions around avoiding failure, because that is what will slow you down and keep you back. If you make decisions around trying to avoid failure, the ultimate conclusion of that is always to basically do nothing, right? Because doing nothing and putting nothing out there is the only truly safe option. You can never know for sure that everybody is going to like what you do and everybody is going to approve of it. In fact, this never happens. You cannot please everybody. No matter how much you want to, you simply cannot please everybody. And so as long as your actions are oriented around how do I avoid failure, you're simply not going to get there and you're going to hold yourself back in many ways, right? You're going to procrastinate by busy work, or you're simply going to give up and you're going to hold yourself back and slow yourself down. So instead of trying to orient your actions around how do I not screw up, how do I not fail, move forward, try to move towards a goal and just be like, look, there's a bunch of work I have to do to get from here to that goal. Some of it's going to do well, some of it won't, some of it will be well received, some of it won't. and it's totally fine. And point number 3 is a specific exercise I want to give you to develop this kind of grit. The exercise is one that I did with my marketing apprentices the second time I did an apprenticeship to hire marketers. We did a bunch of exercises to basically help people develop marketing skills and content creation skills. And one of them was to put a lot of pressure on them to create a lot of content quickly. Because I saw that one of the common problems was that they were overthinking. They were basically much too tied up. Like I said, they tried to make the perfect blog post, and it would take them forever to write a piece of content. And so I thought, how do we cure this? And the solution was that we had them do an exercise where every day in the morning, they had to write and publish a blog post in 1 hour. They would get a prompt for what to write about and then had 1 hour to finish and publish something. We put a website up where they had to actually publish this stuff on the website. So that it wasn't just, a writing exercise where it feels like, oh, it doesn't matter. It actually was a public thing that went out to the world. And of course, some of those articles were not very good. Some of them were like cut off in the middle because it was literally, after 1 hour, pens down kind of thing. So there was a lot of failure in this process. But over the course of 4 weeks, they wrote 25 articles, one every working day. And that's pretty good. That's a lot of output. And they learned far more about how to write and how to be productive and how to push stuff out and how to not overthink in publishing 25 short, sometimes crappy articles than they would have, wrecking their brains around just one piece of content trying to get it perfect. So how do you apply this for yourself? I suggest that you start a 30-day challenge where you challenge yourself to produce stuff, to put stuff out at a rate that feels much too fast for you. So something like 1 blog post a day. And you just force yourself to do this. You force yourself to output volume, because one of the keys to developing this stoicism of the boxer is to be too busy doing the next thing to worry too much about the last thing. And this is what happens to me most of the time. The reason I don't care that much is because I'm just too busy doing the next thing. By the time this video gets published, whether or not it gets tons of views, whether or not it gets a lot of likes, whether or not it gets a lot of comments, I'm busy making the next thing. I'm busy making the next video, the next course, the next marketing campaign, and I just don't have that much time to go back and fret over the details and reactions to this video. I have enough time to take a look, right? To take a look at the stats, see, is there anything I can learn here, right? Because maybe if it does really well, I can take a look and see, can I learn something from this to take forward? Or if it doesn't do well, I can see, well, where did I lose people, right? Why didn't it do well? Maybe I can learn from that and move on. But I don't have time to overthink, overanalyze, or make myself feel bad about it. So that is my challenge to you. Create a 30-day challenge for yourself where you have to output such a high volume that you're definitely going to fail, right? You're definitely going to fail to create amazing stuff the entire time. So you're kind of setting yourself up for high frequency, not so great content and just pushing through. So yes, it's kind of a challenge. I'm basically setting you up for a form of failure. But the point is that you want to do this volume output because first of all, that's going to build your skill like nothing else. And you get to that point where you just notice it just doesn't matter that much, right? You develop this grit, you develop this resilience, because the idea is not that you constantly experience dramatic failure and then get yourself back up and keep going to the next dramatic failure. The idea is that you can just move forward and these blows just don't feel like hard blows anymore. They don't feel like, they don't touch your ego, right? They don't get to you on an emotional level and you can just focus on moving forward. So that's the 30-day challenge. Create some crappy content every day for 30 days to build grit and resilience. Let me know what you think of this strategy and let me know what you challenge yourself to do for the next 30 days by leaving a comment below.